Picture this: you're exploring an old attic, and buried beneath decades of forgotten memories, you discover a yellowed, weathered piece of parchment. As you carefully unfold it, your heart races. There it is, a map covered in cryptic symbols, compass roses, and most importantly, a bold red X marking the spot where untold riches await. This is the moment every treasure hunter dreams of, the discovery that launches 1,000 adventure stories. But here is the question that might shatter your childhood fantasies. Have you ever wondered if these iconic treasure maps actually existed? The image of the pirate treasure map, complete with that mysterious X marking the spot, has become so deeply embedded in our collective consciousness that we rarely stop to question its authenticity. From Hollywood blockbusters to children's birthday party games, the treasure map has become the ultimate symbol of adventure, mystery, and the promise of instant wealth. Today, we're going to embark on a journey that might be more surprising than any treasure hunt. We're going to explore the fascinating gap between the romanticized world of pirate treasure maps and the gritty, often disappointing reality of actual pirate life. This isn't just a story about maps and treasure. It is about how literature and film have shaped our understanding of history, sometimes in ways that bear little resemblance to the truth. The treasure map, as we know it today, is one of the most enduring myths in popular culture. But like many myths, it tells us more about our desires and fantasies than about historical reality. The real story of pirates and their relationship with treasure is far more complex, practical, and ultimately more human than the swashbuckling adventures we've come to expect. Throughout this exploration, we'll uncover the literary origins of the treasure map myth, examine what real pirates actually did with their plunder, and discover the rare instances where pirates did indeed bury their treasure. We'll also delve into why this particular myth has proven so enduring and what it reveals about our collective psyche. So prepare to have your preconceptions challenged, because the truth about pirate treasure maps is far more fascinating than fiction. And by the end of this journey, you might find yourself looking at that iconic X in an entirely different light. The story of the pirate treasure map begins not on the high seas, but in the imagination of writers who understood the power of a good adventure story. The most influential of these was Robert Louis Stevenson, whose 1883 novel Treasure Island fundamentally shaped how we think about pirates, treasure, and the maps that lead to both. Before Stevenson put pen to paper, pirates in literature were often portrayed quite differently. They were villains, yes, but they lacked the romantic appeal that would later define the genre. Stevenson changed all that with a single stroke of genius. He made pirates the protagonists of their own adventure story, and he gave them something that would capture imaginations for generations to come. A treasure map. In Treasure Island, young Jim Hawkins discovers an old sea chest belonging to the deceased pirate Billy Bones. Hidden within are the personal effects of a man who lived a life on the edge of civilization. But most importantly, there's a map. Not just any map, but one that promises to lead to the legendary treasure of Captain Flint, one of the most feared pirates to ever sail the Caribbean. Stevenson's description of this map was revolutionary in its simplicity and evocative power. The island it depicted was roughly shaped, with various landmarks carefully noted: Spyglass Hill, Skeleton Island, the Stockade. But the masterstroke was the placement of crosses, particularly the fateful red crosses that marked where the treasure lay buried. This wasn't just a map. It was a promise of adventure, danger, and untold riches. What made Stevenson's treasure map so compelling was its apparent authenticity. He didn't just describe it, he created it. The author actually drew the map himself, carefully aging it and adding details that made it seem like a genuine pirate artifact. This attention to detail helped blur the line between fiction and reality, making the treasure map seem not just plausible, but inevitable. The map served multiple narrative purposes in Stevenson's story. It was the MacGuffin that set the plot in motion, the source of conflict between various factions seeking the treasure, and ultimately, the key to resolving the story's central mystery. But more than that, it represented something deeper, the idea that adventure and fortune were just one discovery away, that the mundane world contained hidden pathways to extraordinary experiences. Stevenson's innovation didn't exist in a vacuum. He was building on earlier works that had explored similar themes, though none with quite the same impact. Edgar Allan Poe's 1843 short story The Goldbug featured a cryptographic treasure map that had to be decoded to reveal the location of a buried pirate hoard. Poe's map was more complex than Stevenson's, involving invisible ink revealed by heat and a cipher that had to be carefully worked out. But it shared the same basic premise, that pirates had left behind clues to their hidden wealth. Washington Irving also contributed to the developing mythology with stories like Wolfert Webber, which featured tales of Captain Kidd's buried treasure. Irving's work was particularly influential because it was set in real locations around New York, blending historical figures with fictional narratives in ways that made the stories seem more credible. These authors were drawing on genuine historical legends, particularly the stories surrounding Captain William Kidd. Kidd's case was unusual because he had actually buried some treasure, though for reasons very different from those typically portrayed in fiction. The historical Kidd was a privateer who turned pirate, and when he realized he was going to be captured, he buried part of his treasure on Gardiner's Island near Long Island, New York. He hoped to use it as a bargaining chip with the authorities. But the fictional Kidd that emerged in these stories was far more romantic than the real man. In the popular imagination, Kidd became a master planner who had carefully hidden multiple treasure caches across the Caribbean and North American coast, each one marked by cryptic clues and mysterious maps. This fictional version of Kidd influenced how other pirate captains were portrayed in literature, creating a template that would be applied to everyone, from Blackbeard to Henry Morgan. The genius of these early treasure map stories was how they combined the appeal of several different fantasy elements. There was the historical element. These were stories about real pirates who had actually lived and terrorized the seas. There was the puzzle element. The maps required interpretation, code breaking, and careful navigation. There was the adventure element. Finding the treasure required facing dangers and overcoming obstacles. And finally, there was the wish fulfillment element. The promise that ordinary people could stumble upon extraordinary wealth. As these stories gained popularity, they began to influence each other, creating a feedback loop that refined and standardized the treasure map mythology. The maps became more elaborate, the clues more cryptic, and the treasures more valuable. What started as simple literary devices evolved into complex narrative conventions with their own internal logic and rules. The visual representation of these maps became increasingly important as the stories moved from books to other media. Publishers began including fold-out maps in adventure novels, allowing readers to follow along with the characters' journeys. These maps often featured the no-classic elements: compass roses, scale markers, depth soundings, and of course, the crucial X marks that indicated treasure locations. The artistic style of these fictional maps drew heavily on genuine cartographic traditions. Real maritime maps of the period featured similar decorative elements, compass roses, and symbolic representations of geographic features. By mimicking these authentic visual conventions, fictional treasure maps gained an air of credibility that made them seem like genuine historical artifacts. This visual authenticity was crucial to the map's cultural impact. When people looked at a well-drawn treasure map, their minds didn't immediately categorize it as obviously fictional. Instead, it seemed like the kind of thing that might actually exist, hidden away in some forgotten archive or dusty attic. This plausibility was essential to the map's power as symbols of adventure and possibility. The influence of these literary treasure maps extended far beyond the original stories. They established visual and narrative conventions that would be endlessly recycled in subsequent works of fiction. The basic template, an aged parchment covered in cryptic symbols and featuring prominent X marks, became so standardized that it achieved the status of a universal symbol. Hollywood quickly recognized the cinematic potential of treasure maps. They were perfect props, visually striking, immediately understandable to audiences, and capable of driving entire plots. From early adventure serials to big-budget blockbusters, treasure maps became a staple of adventure entertainment. Each new adaptation refined the visual language further, adding new elements while preserving the essential characteristics that made the maps recognizable and appealing. The standardization of treasure map imagery had an interesting side effect. It began to influence how people thought about real historical pirates. The fictional conventions became so deeply embedded in popular culture that they began to seem like historical facts. People started assuming that if fictional pirates used treasure maps, then real pirates must have used them too. The line between entertainment and education became increasingly blurred. This confusion was compounded by the way treasure maps were presented in educational contexts. Museums and historical sites often used stylized maps as educational tools, helping visitors visualize pirate routes and activities. While these maps were intended as illustrations rather than historical documents, they often borrowed visual elements from fictional treasure maps, further reinforcing the association between pirates and elaborate cartographic schemes. The psychological appeal of treasure maps cannot be overstated. They represent a perfect synthesis of mystery, adventure, and material reward. Unlike other forms of gambling or speculation, treasure maps seem to offer a logical, skill-based path to wealth. They suggest that with the right combination of intelligence, persistence, and courage, anyone can unlock the secrets of the past and claim their fortune. This appeal is particularly strong in modern society, where most people feel disconnected from adventure and uncertainty in their daily lives. The treasure map promises to transform the mundane world into a playground of possibilities. It suggests that extraordinary opportunities might be hiding just beneath the surface of ordinary reality, waiting for someone clever enough to recognize and pursue them. The democratizing aspect of treasure map mythology is also significant. Unlike inherited wealth or corporate success, treasure hunting seems accessible to anyone. You don't need special education, social connections, or startup capital. Just courage, wit, and a little luck. This egalitarian appeal has helped maintain the mythology's relevance even as society has changed dramatically since the golden age of piracy. But perhaps the most important aspect of fictional treasure maps is how they simplified the complex realities of pirate life. Real piracy was a brutal, dangerous, and often short-lived profession. Pirates faced constant threats from naval forces, rival pirates, disease, storms, and their own crew members. Their treasure was usually mundane cargo that had to be quickly sold or consumed before it spoiled or they were captured. The treasure map mythology transformed this harsh reality into a romantic adventure. It suggested that pirates were forward-thinking planners who carefully secured their wealth for the future. It implied that piracy was ultimately about accumulating treasure rather than mere survival, and it promised that the chaos and violence of pirate life led to concrete, recoverable rewards that could benefit future generations. This romanticization served an important psychological function. It allowed people to enjoy stories about pirates without confronting the more disturbing aspects of their actual behavior. Pirates could be portrayed as roguish anti-heroes rather than violent criminals, because their ultimate goal seemed to be the accumulation of treasure rather than random destruction and murder. The transformation of pirates from criminals to romantic figures was a gradual process that paralleled the development of treasure map mythology. As the real age of piracy receded into history, the harsh realities of pirate life became less immediate and more abstract. Writers and artists had greater freedom to reimagine pirates in more appealing terms, and the treasure map became a crucial element in this reimagining. Now that we've explored how treasure maps became embedded in our cultural consciousness, it's time to confront a more challenging question. What did real pirates actually do with their plunder? The answer might surprise you, because it reveals a world very different from the one portrayed in our favorite adventure stories. To understand why real pirates rarely buried treasure, we need to first understand what pirate treasure actually consisted of. When most people imagine pirate treasure, they picture chests overflowing with gold coins, precious gems, and ornate jewelry. This image, largely derived from fictional sources, bears little resemblance to the reality of pirate plunder. The truth is that the vast majority of pirate treasure consisted of practical commodities rather than precious metals or gems. Pirates typically targeted merchant vessels carrying goods that could be easily sold or immediately used. This included items like sugar, tobacco, cocoa, spices, textiles, rum, and various manufactured goods. These weren't glamorous treasures, but they were valuable and in high demand in colonial markets. There were good reasons why pirates preferred these everyday commodities over traditional treasure. First, such goods were far more common than precious metals or gems. While Spanish treasure galleons carrying silver and gold certainly existed, they were relatively rare, heavily guarded, and extremely dangerous to attack. Merchant vessels carrying sugar and tobacco were much more numerous, less well defended, and represented a more reliable source of income. Second, commodity goods were easier to dispose of than precious metals or gems. Pirates needed to convert their plunder into cash or trade it for supplies as quickly as possible. A barrel of sugar could be sold in almost any colonial port, no questions asked. But a chest of Spanish gold coins would be much harder to explain, especially in ports where authorities might be looking for specific stolen treasures. The practical nature of most pirate treasure also reflected the immediate needs of pirate crews. Pirates weren't building nest eggs for retirement. They were trying to survive from day to day in an extremely dangerous profession. They needed food, water, weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, and replacement equipment for their ships. These immediate needs took priority over long-term wealth accumulation. The lifestyle of most pirates also worked against the accumulation of traditional treasure. Pirate crews lived hard and spent freely when they had the opportunity. When a successful raid brought in a significant haul, the crew would typically divide the spoils immediately and head for the nearest port to spend their share on alcohol, gambling, prostitutes, and other pleasures. The famous pirate saying, "Easy come, easy go," wasn't just bravado. It reflected the reality of a profession where death could come at any moment. This lifestyle choice wasn't simply due to recklessness or lack of foresight. Pirates understood better than most people how precarious their situation was. The average pirate career lasted only a few years, and many pirates met violent ends well before they could enjoy any accumulated wealth. In such circumstances, immediate gratification made more sense than long-term planning. The social structure of pirate crews also worked against treasure hoarding. Most pirate ships operated under democratic systems, where major decisions required crew approval and plunder was divided according to established shares. A captain who tried to secretly bury treasure for his own future use would be committing a serious breach of pirate ethics, one that could easily lead to mutiny and execution. Trust was always in short supply aboard pirate vessels. Crews were made up of men from different backgrounds, cultures, and loyalties, united only by their shared commitment to piracy. In such an environment, any attempt to hide treasure would be viewed with extreme suspicion. Even if a pirate captain could somehow bury treasure without his crew's knowledge, he would have no guarantee that his secret would remain safe. The practical challenges of burying treasure were also significant. Digging a hole large enough to contain substantial treasure required time, tools, and manpower. It left obvious evidence of disturbance that could easily be discovered by subsequent visitors, and it required the treasure buriers to remember the exact location, which could be problematic if they were drunk, injured, or under stress when they buried it. Navigation in the age of piracy was also much less precise than modern GPS systems might suggest. While skilled navigators could determine their position with reasonable accuracy under good conditions, the techniques of the era left considerable room for error. A treasure buried on one visit might be impossible to relocate on a subsequent voyage, especially if weather conditions or other factors had altered the local landscape. The temporary nature of most pirate bases also worked against treasure burial. Pirates typically operated from temporary havens that might be abandoned at short notice if authorities got too close, or if better opportunities presented themselves elsewhere. Burying treasure at such locations would be extremely risky, since there was no guarantee that the pirates would be able to return to retrieve it. Even when pirates did acquire substantial amounts of precious metals or gems, they usually preferred to convert these items into more liquid assets as quickly as possible. Gold and silver could be melted down and sold as bullion, while gems could be traded to fence operations that specialized in disposing of stolen goods. This conversion process was much safer than trying to store the original items for future use. The economic realities of pirate operations also discouraged treasure hoarding. Pirate ships required constant maintenance and resupply. Crews needed to be fed and paid regularly to maintain morale and prevent mutiny. These ongoing expenses consumed most of the profits from pirate raids, leaving little surplus for long-term accumulation. Furthermore, the political situation in most pirate havens made long-term planning difficult. Colonial authorities were constantly shifting their policies toward piracy, sometimes tolerating it and sometimes cracking down harshly. Pirates never knew when they might need to flee quickly, abandoning any cached supplies or buried treasure. The religious and superstitious beliefs common among sailors also influenced pirate attitudes toward treasure. Many pirates believed that burying treasure would bring bad luck, or that disturbing buried treasure could awaken supernatural guardians. While these beliefs weren't universal, they added another psychological barrier to treasure burial. When pirates did accumulate significant wealth, they usually preferred to invest it in more practical ways. Some purchased properties in friendly ports, established businesses, or bought their way into respectable society. These investments were much more secure than buried treasure. and offered the possibility of generating ongoing income. The few pirates who did achieve substantial wealth typically did so by transitioning away from pure piracy toward more legitimate forms of commerce. Henry Morgan, for example, eventually became the lieutenant governor of Jamaica and owned extensive plantations. His wealth came not from buried treasure, but from successful raids combined with smart political maneuvering and business investments. It's also worth noting that the popular image of pirates as wildly successful treasure hunters is largely mythical. Most pirates lived hand-to-mouth existences, barely earning enough to cover their basic needs. The few who became truly wealthy were exceptional cases, and their success usually depended on factors beyond simple treasure hunting. The romantic image of pirates carefully burying treasure for future retrieval also ignores the psychological realities of pirate life. These were men who had already demonstrated a willingness to live outside the law and take extreme risks for immediate rewards. The kind of patient, long-term thinking required for successful treasure catching was largely incompatible with the personality traits that made someone a successful pirate in the first place. Despite all these factors working against treasure burial, there were indeed a few historical cases where pirates did bury their treasure. These cases were exceptional, and they occurred under very specific circumstances that made burial the least bad option available. The most famous of these cases involves Captain William Kidd, whose story provides fascinating insight into why a pirate might choose to bury treasure and what happened when he did. William Kidd's story begins not with piracy but with privateering, a legal form of state-sponsored piracy that allowed privately owned vessels to attack enemy ships during wartime. In 1695, Kidd received a commission from the English government to hunt pirates in the Indian Ocean and to attack French ships during King William's War. This was a legitimate, legal enterprise that promised both patriotic service and substantial profits. However, Kidd's privateering mission went wrong almost from the beginning. His crew, recruited from the rough waterfront taverns of New York and London, proved difficult to control and eager for more aggressive action than his commission legally allowed. After months at sea, with little to show for their efforts, pressure mounted to attack any available targets, regardless of their nationality or legal status. The turning point came when Kidd attacked the Quedagh Merchant, a ship sailing under French passes but actually owned by Armenian merchants under the protection of the Great Mogul of India. This attack, while technically legal under his commission, created serious diplomatic problems for England and effectively transformed Kidd from a privateering hero into a wanted fugitive. Realizing that his situation had become untenable, Kidd attempted to return to New York to clear his name and prove his innocence. However, he soon learned that he had been declared a pirate and that arrest warrants were waiting for him in most colonial ports. This put him in an impossible position. He needed to prove his legitimacy, but he couldn't safely approach the authorities who could vindicate him. It was under these desperate circumstances that Kidd made the decision to bury part of his treasure. His reasoning was strategic rather than romantic. He hoped to use the buried treasure as a bargaining chip with colonial authorities, offering to reveal its location in exchange for a pardon, or at least a fair trial. This wasn't about creating a treasure map for future adventure. It was about survival. Kidd chose Gardiner's Island, off the coast of Long Island, New York, as his burial site. The island was privately owned by John Gardiner, whom Kidd knew to be discreet and potentially sympathetic. The location was also strategically chosen, close enough to New York to be useful in negotiations but isolated enough to keep the treasure secure in the meantime. The burial itself was a practical affair, very different from the elaborate ceremonies depicted in fiction. Kidd and a small group of trusted crew members dug a pit and buried several chests containing gold, silver, precious stones, and other valuables. There was no mysterious map created. Kidd simply told Gardner what had been buried and where, assuming that this information would remain confidential until he could return to retrieve it. Unfortunately for Kidd, his plan backfired spectacularly. When he finally surrendered to colonial authorities in Boston, they were far more interested in making him an example than in negotiating with him. The buried treasure, rather than serving as a bargaining chip, became evidence of his piratical activities. Gardner was compelled to reveal the location of the treasure, which was promptly dug up and confiscated by the authorities. The treasure itself was somewhat disappointing compared to the legends that would later grow around it. The total value was significant but not spectacular. Certainly not the king's ransom that folklore would later suggest. It consisted mainly of gold dust, silver bars, precious stones, and various luxury goods that Kidd had accumulated during his voyages. While valuable, it represented only a fraction of the wealth that Kidd had supposedly accumulated during his career. Kidd was eventually transported to London, where he was tried for piracy and murder. Despite his protests that he had acted under legal authority, he was convicted and executed in 1701. His buried treasure, rather than saving him, had become the final nail in his coffin. The authorities used it as proof of his piratical activities, and its recovery eliminated any leverage he might have hoped to gain from its concealment. The irony of Kidd's story is that the very treasure burial that was supposed to secure his freedom instead sealed his fate. Had he never buried the treasure, there would have been less physical evidence of his alleged crimes. But once the treasure was recovered and catalogued, it provided tangible proof of his activities that was difficult to refute in court. Despite these harsh realities, the story of Kidd's buried treasure quickly grew into legend. Writers and storytellers were fascinated by the romantic image of a pirate captain secretly burying his treasure, and they began to embellish the story with details that made it more dramatic and appealing. The practical burial pit became a mysterious treasure cache marked by cryptic clues. The strategic decision became a romantic gesture toward future generations of treasure hunters. These embellishments were aided by the fact that Kidd's treasure was never fully recovered according to some accounts. While the authorities did find and confiscate the treasure from Gardner's Island, rumors persisted that Kidd had buried additional caches elsewhere. These rumors were almost certainly false. Kidd's desperate circumstances and limited time made multiple treasure burials extremely unlikely, but they provided the foundation for countless treasure hunting expeditions and adventure stories. Other historical cases of buried pirate treasure are even rarer and more ambiguous than Kidd's. Francis Drake, the famous English privateer, did temporarily cache some silver at Nombre de Dios in Panama during his circumnavigation of the globe. However, this was unpermanent treasure burial, but rather a temporary storage solution. While Drake's expedition dealt with more pressing concerns, the silver was recovered shortly afterward, and never constituted a treasure map scenario. Some stories speak of other pirates who supposedly buried treasure in the Caribbean or along the North American coast, but these accounts are generally unsupported by reliable historical evidence. Most appear to be later inventions created by treasure hunters or storytellers who wanted to add credibility to their own theories or adventures. The famous treasure of Lima, allegedly buried on Cocos Island, is another example of how folklore can transform practical decisions into romantic legends. According to the story, Spanish authorities in Lima loaded their treasure onto a ship for safekeeping during political upheavals in the 1820s. The ship's crew supposedly murdered the Spanish officials and buried the treasure on Coco's Island before being captured and executed. While this story has elements of historical plausibility, there's no solid evidence that any such treasure was actually buried on Coco's Island. Nevertheless, the story has attracted hundreds of treasure hunting expeditions over the past 2 centuries, none of which have found any significant treasure. The persistence of these expeditions demonstrates the enduring power of treasure burial legends, even when they lack historical foundation. The rarity of genuine buried pirate treasure stands in stark contrast to the prevalence of underwater treasure. Many pirate ships were sunk during battles or wrecked in storms, taking their cargo down with them. These underwater sites represent the closest thing to actual pirate treasure caches that exist in the real world. The most famous of these is the Widder, the flagship of pirate captain Black Sam Bellamy. The ship sank off Cape Cod in 1717, and its wreck was discovered and excavated beginning in the 1980s. The treasure recovered from the Widder provides a much more accurate picture of what pirate treasure actually looked like. A mixture of coins, jewelry, tools, weapons, and personal effects, rather than the chests of gold and gems depicted in fiction. Similarly, what is believed to be Blackbeard's flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was discovered off the coast of North Carolina. The artifacts recovered from this site tell a similar story. Valuable but practical items mixed with personal belongings and ship's equipment. Rather than legendary treasure hoards, these underwater discoveries are significant because they provide authentic glimpses into pirate life and wealth that are unfiltered by later folklore and embellishment. They show that while pirates did accumulate valuable goods, their treasure was generally more mundane and practical than the romantic legends suggest. The archaeological evidence from pirate shipwrecks also reinforces the conclusion that treasure burial was extremely rare. If pirates routinely buried substantial treasure caches, we would expect to find evidence of this in contemporary records, maps, or archaeological sites. The fact that such evidence is almost entirely lacking suggests that treasure burial was indeed exceptional rather than routine. The psychological impact of these rare treasure burial cases has been vastly disproportionate to their historical frequency. The handful of documented cases, particularly Kidd's story, have been amplified and mythologized to such an extent that they seem to represent typical pirate behavior rather than exceptional circumstances. This demonstrates how powerful and appealing the treasure burial concept is to human psychology. Understanding why treasure maps have maintained their grip on our imagination requires delving into fundamental aspects of human psychology and cultural symbolism. The enduring appeal of these fictional artifacts reveals important truths about our desires, fears, and fantasies that extend far beyond simple entertainment. At its most basic level, the treasure map represents the promise of transformation. It suggests that ordinary people can stumble upon extraordinary opportunities that will fundamentally change their lives. This promise is particularly powerful in societies where social mobility seems limited, or where people feel trapped in mundane circumstances. The treasure map offers hope that adventure and wealth are always just one discovery away. The democratic nature of treasure hunting is crucial to its appeal. Unlike other paths to wealth, treasure hunting seems to reward personal qualities that anyone might possess: courage, intelligence, persistence, and luck. You don't need to be born into wealth, attend elite schools, or navigate complex social hierarchies. You just need to be clever enough to interpret the clues and brave enough to follow them. This accessibility makes treasure hunting an attractive fantasy for people who feel excluded from more conventional paths to success. The treasure map also provides a sense of agency and control that many people find lacking in their everyday lives. Modern life often involves complex, bureaucratic systems where individual action seems to have little impact. But treasure hunting reduces life to its simplest, most direct terms. Follow the map, find the treasure, claim your reward. It's a fantasy of pure meritocracy where success depends entirely on your own actions and abilities. The puzzle aspect of treasure maps adds another layer of appeal. Humans have a deep psychological need to solve problems and uncover hidden meanings. Treasure maps satisfy this need by presenting challenges that seem both solvable and worthwhile. They offer the intellectual satisfaction of puzzle solving combined with the promise of material reward. A perfect combination for many personality types. The historical setting of most treasure map stories also contributes to their appeal. The age of piracy represents a time when the world seemed larger, more mysterious, and less completely explored than it is today. Modern satellite mapping and GPS technology have eliminated most of the world's blank spaces, making true geographic discovery nearly impossible for ordinary people. Treasure maps offer access to a time when such discoveries were still possible, when unknown islands and hidden valleys might still contain secrets waiting to be uncovered. The romantic appeal of pirate culture itself cannot be ignored. Pirates represent a form of radical freedom that many people find attractive, even if they wouldn't want to live it themselves. They operated outside conventional society's rules, answering to no authority except their own crews. They lived lives of adventure, danger, and excitement that contrast sharply with the safety and routine of modern existence. Treasure maps connect us to this romantic vision of freedom and adventure. The visual appeal of treasure maps is also significant. They combine artistic beauty with functional purpose in ways that few other objects can match. A well-designed treasure map is simultaneously a work of art, a navigational tool, a puzzle, and a promise. The careful calligraphy, decorative elements, and aged appearance of fictional treasure maps create objects that seem valuable in their own right, independent of the treasures they supposedly reveal. The collectible nature of maps also taps into deep human instincts for gathering and preserving valuable objects. Even fictional treasure maps often become treasured possessions for their owners, carefully preserved and displayed like genuine historical artifacts. This collecting impulse is reinforced by the map's appearance of age and authenticity, which makes them seem like genuine pieces of history rather than modern reproductions. The social aspect of treasure hunting adds another dimension to its appeal. Treasure map stories often involve groups of adventurers working together toward a common goal. This collaborative element provides a fantasy of meaningful teamwork and shared adventure that many people find lacking in their work or personal lives. The treasure hunt becomes a bonding experience that brings people together and creates lasting friendships. The educational aspect of treasure maps should not be overlooked either. They provide a painless way to learn about history, geography, and navigation. Children who might resist formal lessons about maritime history or cartographic skills will eagerly study treasure maps for clues about pirate routes and hidden locations. This educational value has helped maintain the cultural relevance of treasure maps, even as their entertainment value has been supplemented by more sophisticated media. The adaptability of treasure map concepts to new technologies and media has also contributed to their longevity. Video games have embraced treasure hunting as a core gameplay mechanic, allowing players to experience the thrill of following cryptic clues and discovering hidden rewards. GPS technology has enabled real-world treasure hunting games like geocaching, which recreate the treasure map experience using modern tools. Virtual reality promises to make treasure hunting even more immersive and accessible. The therapeutic value of treasure map fantasies should also be considered. For many people, imagining themselves on treasure hunting adventures provides a healthy escape from stress, anxiety, and depression. The fantasy of transformation and adventure can provide hope and motivation during difficult periods. Mental health professionals have even used treasure map metaphors in therapeutic settings to help clients envision positive changes in their lives. The entrepreneurial appeal of treasure hunting is another factor in its enduring popularity. The treasure map represents the ultimate small business opportunity, high potential rewards with minimal startup costs. This appeals to people who dream of financial independence but lack the resources or connections for conventional business ventures. The fact that treasure hunting requires more luck than skill makes it seem accessible to people who might feel intimidated by more complex forms of entrepreneurship. Cultural factors also play a role in maintaining the appeal of treasure maps. Many cultures have stories about hidden wealth waiting to be discovered by worthy individuals. These stories serve important social functions by providing hope during difficult times and by teaching moral lessons about courage, persistence, and proper use of wealth. Treasure map stories fit naturally into these cultural traditions. The globalization of entertainment has helped spread treasure map concepts across cultural boundaries. Stories that originated in European maritime traditions have found enthusiastic audiences in cultures with very different historical experiences. This cross-cultural appeal suggests that the psychological needs addressed by treasure map fantasies are universal human characteristics rather than culturally specific phenomena. The commercialization of treasure hunting has created entire industries devoted to satisfying the public appetite for treasure-related entertainment and products. Tourist destinations market themselves as treasure hunting locations, complete with replica maps and guided expeditions. Manufacturers produce treasure hunting equipment, maps, and accessories. Publishers continue to produce new books, games, and media featuring treasure hunting themes. This commercialization has created a feedback loop that reinforces the cultural importance of treasure maps. As more products and experiences are created to satisfy demand for treasure hunting entertainment, the concept becomes more visible and familiar to new audiences. This increased visibility generates additional demand, leading to further commercial development. The nostalgic appeal of treasure maps also contributes to their staying power. For many adults, treasure maps evoke memories of childhood adventures and imagination. Playing with toy treasure maps, reading adventure stories, or watching pirate movies created positive associations that persist into adulthood. These nostalgic feelings make treasure map content appealing even to people who might otherwise consider it childish or unrealistic. The aspirational nature of treasure hunting appeals to people across economic levels. Wealthy individuals can afford to fund actual treasure hunting expeditions, while those with more modest means can enjoy treasure hunting through books, games, and other forms of entertainment. The fantasy scales appropriately to individual circumstances, making it accessible regardless of resources. The technological advancement has created new possibilities for treasure hunting that previous generations could never have imagined. Metal detectors, underwater exploration equipment, satellite imagery, and computer analysis have made certain types of treasure hunting more feasible than ever before. While these technologies haven't led to the discovery of pirate treasure maps, they have enabled the recovery of genuine historical artifacts and shipwrecks that satisfy some of the same psychological needs. The environmental movement has even found ways to incorporate treasure hunting concepts into conservation efforts. Beach cleanup events are sometimes organized as treasure hunts, where participants search for valuable recyclable materials or specific types of debris. This approach makes environmental work more engaging and rewarding for participants. The rise of social media has created new ways for people to share their treasure hunting experiences and fantasies. Online communities devoted to treasure hunting provide forums for discussing theories, sharing discoveries, and organizing expeditions. These communities help maintain interest in treasure hunting by providing social validation and support for what might otherwise be solitary activities. The psychological need for mystery and wonder in an increasingly explained and documented world cannot be underestimated. Treasure maps represent one of the last domains where genuine mystery and discovery still seem possible. In an age where internet searches can answer almost any factual question instantly, the idea of secrets that can only be unlocked through physical adventure and personal discovery becomes increasingly precious. Educational systems have also recognized the motivational power of treasure hunting concepts. Teachers use treasure hunt formats to make learning more engaging, creating educational adventures where students must solve problems and find clues to advance through lessons. This gamification of education taps into the same psychological rewards that make fictional treasure maps so appealing. The scientific community has even found legitimate applications for treasure hunting methodologies. Archaeological expeditions use many of the same skills and techniques that fictional treasure hunters employ. Careful map analysis, systematic searching, and persistence in the face of setbacks. The main difference is that archaeologists are hunting for knowledge rather than gold, but the fundamental human drives are remarkably similar. However, perhaps the most important factor in the enduring appeal of treasure maps is their function as symbols of hope and possibility. In a world that often seems predetermined and limited, treasure maps represent the tantalizing suggestion that extraordinary opportunities still exist for those bold enough to seek them. They promise that the mundane world contains hidden pathways to adventure and transformation. This symbolic function explains why treasure maps remain popular even among people who understand their fictional nature. The maps don't need to be real to serve their psychological purpose. They simply need to represent the possibility that life contains more adventure and opportunity than it usually reveals. In this sense, every treasure map is both a lie and a truth. False in its specific claims, but true in its deeper promise that life can surprise us in wonderful ways. The persistence of treasure map mythology in the face of historical evidence also reveals something important about how humans process information. We tend to remember and value stories that satisfy our emotional needs more than facts that contradict our desires. The rational knowledge that pirates rarely buried treasure cannot compete with the emotional appeal of imagining ourselves following cryptic clues to hidden wealth. This psychological preference for satisfying fiction over disappointing reality is not unique to treasure maps. It appears in many areas of human culture and belief. Understanding this tendency can help us appreciate why certain myths persist despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It also helps explain why debunking popular myths often has little impact on their cultural influence. The treasure map myth has also been remarkably successful at adapting to changing cultural contexts. As society has evolved, treasure map stories have evolved with it, incorporating new technologies, social values, and concerns while maintaining their essential appeal. Modern treasure hunters use GPS and metal detectors, but they're still following the same basic template established by Stevenson and his contemporaries. The globalization of media has helped treasure map concepts spread to cultures that had no historical connection to European piracy. Adventure movies, video games, and literature featuring treasure maps have found enthusiastic audiences worldwide, suggesting that the psychological needs they address are universal rather than culturally specific. The democratizing effect of modern technology has also created new opportunities for treasure hunting enthusiasts. Online mapping services, historical databases, and communication tools have made it easier than ever for amateur treasure hunters to research historical claims, organize expeditions, and share their findings. While these tools haven't led to the discovery of authentic pirate treasure maps, they have enabled the recovery of various historical artifacts and have provided satisfying adventures for countless enthusiasts. The legal and ethical frameworks surrounding treasure hunting have become increasingly complex as governments and international organizations have developed more sophisticated approaches to protecting cultural heritage. Modern treasure hunters must navigate regulations designed to prevent the destruction of archaeological sites and ensure that discovered artifacts are properly preserved and studied. These regulations have generally made treasure hunting more challenging and expensive, but they have also helped legitimize it as a field worthy of serious consideration. The economic impact of treasure hunting mythology should not be underestimated. Tourism industries in many locations have built substantial businesses around treasure hunting themes, offering everything from replica pirate ships to guided metal detecting expeditions. These businesses provide employment and economic activity while satisfying the public appetite for treasure hunting experiences. The relationship between treasure map mythology and actual historical research has been complex and sometimes problematic. On one hand, popular interest in treasure hunting has funded legitimate archaeological research and has encouraged public interest in maritime history. On the other hand, the romanticized expectations created by treasure map stories have sometimes led to disappointment when historical reality proves less exciting than fiction. Professional historians and archaeologists have generally learned to work with, rather than against, public fascination with treasure hunting. Museums and educational institutions often use treasure hunting themes to attract visitors and then provide more accurate historical information once they have captured public attention. This approach acknowledges the power of treasure map mythology, while using it as a gateway to more serious historical education. The psychological relationship between treasure hunting and gambling is worth exploring. Both activities involve risking time, effort, and money in pursuit of potentially large rewards that depend partly on luck. However, treasure hunting offers something that traditional gambling cannot: the illusion of skill and the promise of historical discovery. Treasure hunters can convince themselves that their success depends on research, intelligence, and persistence rather than pure chance. This perceived element of skill and knowledge makes treasure hunting more socially acceptable than traditional gambling. Even when the odds of success are similarly low, society generally approves of people who spend their weekends metal detecting on beaches, but might be more critical of those who spend the same amount of time and money in casinos. The treasure map mythology helps maintain this distinction by suggesting that treasure hunting is an educational and potentially culturally valuable activity. The therapeutic potential of treasure hunting activities has been recognized by mental health professionals and recreational therapists. The combination of outdoor activity, problem solving, and the possibility of discovery can provide beneficial experiences for people dealing with depression, anxiety, or social isolation. Treasure hunting clubs and organizations often function as social support networks for their members, providing community and shared purpose that extend beyond the hunting activities themselves. The technological evolution of treasure hunting has created new possibilities that previous generations could never have imagined. Ground-penetrating radar, underwater robotics, and satellite imagery have revolutionized professional archaeological work and have also become available to serious amateur treasure hunters. These technologies have led to legitimate historical discoveries, even if they haven't revealed any authentic pirate treasure maps. The rise of citizen science has created new opportunities for treasure hunting enthusiasts to contribute to legitimate historical research. Projects that catalog and map historical sites often rely on volunteers who combine their passion for treasure hunting with genuine scientific methodology. This development has helped bridge the gap between entertainment and education in the treasure hunting community. The environmental impact of treasure hunting activities has become an increasingly important consideration. Responsible treasure hunting organizations now emphasize conservation and minimal impact searching techniques. They teach their members to respect historical sites and natural environments while pursuing their hobby. This evolution reflects broader cultural changes in environmental awareness and has helped improve the public image of treasure hunting. The legal framework surrounding treasure hunting varies dramatically between jurisdictions, creating a complex landscape that modern treasure hunters must navigate carefully. Some locations welcome treasure hunting as a form of tourism and economic development, while others strictly regulate or prohibit such activities to protect archaeological sites and cultural heritage. Understanding these legal variations is essential for anyone seriously interested in treasure hunting. The international nature of many treasure hunting claims has created diplomatic and legal complications that would have been unimaginable to historical pirates. Modern treasure hunters must deal with questions of territorial waters, international law, and cultural patrimony that add layers of complexity to any significant discovery. These complications have generally made treasure hunting more expensive and legally risky than the romantic stories suggest. The insurance and liability issues associated with treasure hunting expeditions have become increasingly complex as the activity has become more professional and expensive. Modern treasure hunting expeditions often involve significant financial investments and sophisticated equipment, creating substantial risks that must be carefully managed. These practical considerations are far removed from the simple adventure portrayed in fictional treasure map stories. The academic study of treasure hunting mythology has revealed important insights into human psychology, cultural transmission, and the relationship between fiction and belief. Scholars in fields ranging from anthropology to media studies have examined how treasure map stories spread, evolve, and maintain their influence across different cultures and time periods. This academic interest has helped legitimize treasure hunting as a subject worthy of serious study, even when the actual prospects for finding genuine pirate treasure remain minimal. Universities now offer courses that examine treasure hunting from historical, psychological, and cultural perspectives, helping students understand both the mythology and the reality. The relationship between treasure hunting and broader adventure tourism has become increasingly important. As travel has become more accessible and as people seek more engaging vacation experiences, destinations that can credibly claim connections to historical piracy or treasure stories have found that these associations can attract visitors and generate economic activity. The digital revolution has created entirely new forms of treasure hunting that exist in virtual rather than physical space. Video games featuring treasure hunting have become increasingly sophisticated, offering experiences that can satisfy many of the same psychological needs as physical treasure hunting. while avoiding the practical difficulties and legal complications of real-world searching. Augmented reality and location-based games have begun to blur the lines between physical and virtual treasure hunting, creating hybrid experiences that combine real-world exploration with digital rewards and challenges. These developments suggest new directions for the evolution of treasure hunting that may become increasingly important as technology continues to advance. The social media age has created new ways for treasure hunting enthusiasts to document and share their experiences. Online platforms allow treasure hunters to build audiences, share discoveries, and create communities around their interests. This visibility has helped maintain public interest in treasure hunting, while also creating new economic opportunities for successful content creators. The crowdsourcing potential of modern communication technology has enabled treasure hunting projects that would have been impossible for previous generations. Large-scale searches can now coordinate the efforts of many volunteers across wide geographic areas, dramatically increasing the scope of possible investigations. However, the same technologies that enable large-scale collaboration also create new forms of misinformation and fraud. False claims about treasure discoveries can spread rapidly through social media, creating confusion and sometimes leading to expensive wild goose chases. The treasure hunting community has had to develop new skills for evaluating and verifying claims in the digital age. The relationship between treasure hunting mythology and national identity has become increasingly complex in the modern world. Many countries have embraced pirate history as part of their cultural heritage and tourist appeal, even when the historical reality of piracy in their territories was quite different from the romantic fiction. This selective adoption of pirate mythology for economic purposes reflects broader patterns of how cultures adapt and commercialize their historical narratives. The gender dynamics of treasure hunting have evolved significantly from the male-dominated adventure stories of earlier eras. Modern treasure hunting includes many women as both participants and leaders, and contemporary treasure hunting fiction increasingly features female protagonists. This evolution reflects broader changes in social attitudes, while maintaining the essential appeal of the treasure hunting concept. The generational transmission of treasure hunting interest reveals important patterns about how cultural myths maintain their influence over time. Parents who grew up with pirate stories and treasure maps often share these interests with their children, creating family traditions that span decades. These personal connections help ensure that treasure hunting mythology remains relevant to new generations. The commercialization of treasure hunting has created markets for everything from replica treasure maps to professional searching equipment. This industry serves both practical treasure hunters and people who simply enjoy collecting treasure hunting memorabilia. The existence of these markets reflects the depth and breadth of public interest in treasure hunting themes. The relationship between treasure hunting and broader conspiracy theories has become increasingly apparent in the Internet age. Some treasure hunting claims have become entangled with elaborate conspiracy theories involving secret societies, government cover-ups, and hidden historical truths. These developments have sometimes damaged the credibility of more serious treasure hunting research. The psychological profile of modern treasure hunters reveals interesting patterns that differ somewhat from the stereotypes perpetuated by popular media. Serious treasure hunters often combine romantic idealism with practical skills and methodical approaches to research and searching. They tend to be people who enjoy combining historical research with outdoor activities, and who find satisfaction in the process of searching, regardless of whether they find actual treasure. The seasonal and geographic patterns of treasure hunting activity reflect both practical considerations and cultural factors. Beach areas see increased treasure hunting activity during summer months, when metal detecting is more pleasant, while research-intensive projects often peak during winter months, when outdoor searching is less appealing. The age demographics of treasure hunting reveal interesting generational patterns. While the activity attracts people of all ages, there are notable concentrations among retirees who have the time and resources for extensive searching, and among younger people who are attracted by the technological aspects of modern treasure hunting. The health benefits of treasure hunting activities have been documented by researchers studying active aging and outdoor recreation. The combination of physical activity, mental stimulation, and social interaction provided by treasure hunting can contribute to both physical and mental health, particularly for older adults. The economic impact of serious treasure hunting extends beyond the direct costs of equipment and travel. Professional treasure hunting expeditions can require substantial investments in research, legal fees, equipment, and personnel. These expenditures support industries ranging from marine archaeology to specialized manufacturing. The relationship between amateur and professional treasure hunters has evolved as the field has become more sophisticated. Professional archaeologists and amateur treasure hunters sometimes collaborate on projects that combine professional expertise with volunteer enthusiasm, creating partnerships that benefit both parties. The documentation and preservation challenges associated with treasure hunting discoveries have become increasingly important as the field has matured. Even finds that don't constitute major treasure still have historical value that requires proper conservation and study. This has led to increased cooperation between treasure hunters and professional conservators. The statistical reality of treasure hunting success rates provides sobering context for the romantic mythology. Serious treasure hunters generally understand that the vast majority of searches will not result in significant discoveries, but they find satisfaction in the process itself and in the occasional minor finds that do occur. The relationship between treasure hunting and broader historical preservation efforts has become more collaborative as both communities have recognized their shared interests in protecting and understanding historical sites. Modern treasure hunters often serve as informal guardians of historical locations, reporting vandalism or environmental threats to appropriate authorities. The international coordination required for major treasure hunting projects has led to the development of new forms of cooperation between researchers, governments, and private organizations. These collaborations have created models that may be applicable to other forms of international cultural and scientific cooperation. The insurance and liability considerations surrounding modern treasure hunting have created new professional specialties and have influenced how expeditions are planned and executed. Understanding these practical considerations is essential for anyone contemplating serious treasure hunting activities. The relationship between treasure hunting and broader adventure sports has led to cross-pollination of techniques and equipment. Rock climbing, scuba diving, and wilderness survival skills all have applications in treasure hunting. Creating connections between different outdoor activity communities, the educational partnerships between treasure hunting organizations and schools have created new opportunities for hands-on historical education. Students who participate in supervised treasure hunting activities often develop deeper interest in history and archaeology than those who only encounter these subjects in traditional classroom settings. The technological advancement in detection and analysis equipment continues to create new possibilities for treasure hunting while also making the activity more expensive and technically complex. Modern treasure hunters must often develop sophisticated technical skills to operate and maintain their equipment effectively. As we reach the conclusion of our exploration into the world of pirate treasure maps, it's worth reflecting on what we've discovered about the relationship between myth and reality, between the stories we tell ourselves and the lives we actually live. The treasure map, as we've seen, is far more than just a fictional device. It's a window into fundamental aspects of human nature and cultural transmission. The historical reality is clear. Authentic pirate treasure maps, complete with cryptic symbols and X marks the spot, simply did not exist in any meaningful way during the golden age of piracy. The handful of documented cases where pirates actually buried treasure occurred under specific, desperate circumstances and involved practical considerations rather than romantic gestures toward future generations of adventurers. Real pirates lived hardscrabble lives focused on immediate survival rather than long-term wealth accumulation. Their treasure usually consisted of practical commodities that needed to be quickly converted to cash or consumed before spoiling. The democratic nature of most pirate crews made secret treasure hoarding both impractical and dangerous. The technical challenges of navigation and the temporary nature of most pirate bases made treasure burial a poor strategy for wealth preservation. Yet the myth of the pirate treasure map has proven remarkably durable and influential, shaping our collective understanding of piracy in ways that often bear little resemblance to historical fact. This persistence reveals important truths about how humans process information and construct meaning from historical narratives. We've seen how literary giants like Robert Louis Stevenson and Edgar Allan Poe created compelling fictional frameworks that satisfied deep psychological needs for adventure, mystery, and transformation. Their treasure maps offered democratic access to extraordinary possibilities, promising that ordinary people could discover extraordinary opportunities through courage, intelligence, and persistence. The visual appeal and apparent authenticity of well-crafted fictional treasure maps helped blur the line between entertainment and historical documentation. As these images became more standardized and widely reproduced, they began to seem like natural and inevitable aspects of pirate culture rather than creative inventions of modern storytellers. The psychological functions served by treasure map mythology help explain its persistence despite overwhelming historical evidence to the contrary. In a world that often seems predetermined and limited, treasure maps represent hope and possibility. They promise that the mundane world contains hidden pathways to adventure and transformation, accessible to anyone brave enough to pursue them. The adaptability of treasure map concepts to new technologies and cultural contexts has helped maintain their relevance across changing social conditions. From traditional books and films to modern video games and augmented reality experiences, treasure maps have found new forms of expression while preserving their essential psychological appeal. The democratic and entrepreneurial aspects of treasure hunting continue to attract people who feel excluded from more conventional paths to success and adventure. The promise that extraordinary opportunities await those willing to seek them provides hope and motivation that extends far beyond actual treasure hunting activities. The educational and therapeutic applications of treasure hunting concepts demonstrate their practical value beyond pure entertainment. Teachers use treasure hunt formats to make learning more engaging, while mental health professionals employ treasure hunting metaphors to help clients envision positive changes in their lives. The commercial and cultural industries that have grown up around treasure hunting mythology provide employment and economic activity while satisfying public appetite for adventure-related experiences. From tourist destinations to equipment manufacturers to content creators, Entire economic ecosystems have developed around concepts that have little basis in historical fact but tremendous power as cultural symbols. The relationship between amateur treasure hunters and professional archaeologists has evolved toward greater cooperation and mutual respect. While their methods and goals may differ, both communities share interests in historical preservation and understanding that create opportunities for collaboration. The technological advancement in detection and analysis equipment has created new possibilities for legitimate historical discovery, even if it hasn't revealed authentic pirate treasure maps. Ground-penetrating radar, underwater robotics, and satellite imagery have revolutionized both professional archaeology and amateur treasure hunting. The legal and ethical frameworks surrounding treasure hunting have become increasingly sophisticated as governments and international organizations have developed better approaches to protecting cultural heritage while allowing legitimate research and recreation. The global spread of treasure map mythology through modern media has demonstrated its cross-cultural appeal, suggesting that the psychological needs it addresses are universal human characteristics rather than culturally specific phenomena. The environmental movement has found ways to incorporate treasure hunting concepts into conservation efforts, using the appeal of searching and discovery to motivate participation in environmental protection activities. The social media age has created new communities and communication networks for treasure hunting enthusiasts, while also creating new challenges related to misinformation and fraud. The democratization of publishing and broadcasting has allowed more people to share their experiences and theories, while also making it more difficult to evaluate the credibility of various claims. The academic study of treasure hunting mythology has provided insights into human psychology, cultural transmission, and the relationship between fiction and belief. Universities now offer courses examining treasure hunting from historical, psychological, and cultural perspectives. Perhaps most importantly, our exploration has revealed the complex relationship between truth and myth in human culture. The treasure map may be historically inaccurate, but it serves real psychological and social functions that help explain its persistence and influence. Understanding this relationship can help us approach other cultural myths and historical narratives with greater sophistication and nuance. We can appreciate the emotional and psychological needs that these stories serve, while maintaining awareness of their relationship to historical fact. The treasure map also provides a case study in how entertainment media can shape historical understanding. The visual conventions and narrative frameworks created by fiction writers have become so deeply embedded in popular culture that they're often mistaken for historical documentation. This phenomenon isn't unique to pirate treasure maps. Similar patterns can be observed in popular understanding of many historical periods and cultures. The challenge for educators and communicators is finding ways to satisfy the psychological needs served by appealing myths, while also conveying accurate historical information. The enduring appeal of treasure maps also reminds us of the importance of mystery and possibility in human experience. In an age where internet searches can instantly answer most factual questions, the idea of secrets that can only be unlocked through personal adventure and discovery becomes increasingly precious. The treasure map represents one of the last domains where genuine mystery and wonder seem possible. This psychological function may become even more important as technology continues to eliminate uncertainty and unpredictability from daily life. The democratic ideals embedded in treasure hunting mythology, the notion that extraordinary opportunities should be accessible to anyone willing to pursue them, reflect important cultural values that extend far beyond entertainment. These ideals influence how we think about education, entrepreneurship, and social mobility. The collaborative aspects of many treasure hunting stories, where groups of adventurers work together toward common goals, provide models for teamwork and community that many people find lacking in modern life. The treasure hunt becomes a bonding experience that creates lasting relationships and shared memories. The environmental settings of most treasure map stories, tropical islands, hidden caves, mysterious coastlines, provide psychological escape to natural environments that many people rarely experience in their increasingly urbanized lives. The treasure map promises access to wild spaces and authentic adventures. The historical connections embedded in treasure hunting stories provide links to past eras that seem more adventurous and less constrained than modern life. The age of piracy represents a time when individual action could have dramatic consequences, and when the world still contained vast, unexplored territories. The moral complexity of pirate characters in treasure hunting stories allows audiences to explore themes of freedom, rebellion, and authority in relatively safe fictional contexts. Pirates can be portrayed as romantic anti-heroes rather than criminals, because their ultimate goal seems to be treasure accumulation rather than random violence. The puzzle-solving aspects of treasure maps satisfy intellectual needs for problem-solving and pattern recognition that may be underutilized in many modern occupations. The maps provide challenges that seem both solvable and worthwhile, combining mental stimulation with material rewards. The artistic and aesthetic appeal of well-designed treasure maps provides visual pleasure that enhances their psychological impact. The careful calligraphy, decorative elements, and aged appearance create objects that seem valuable in their own right, independent of the treasures they supposedly reveal. The collectible nature of treasure maps and related materials provides opportunities for acquisition and preservation that satisfy deep human instincts for gathering valuable objects. Even obviously fictional treasure maps can become treasured possessions that are carefully preserved and displayed. The nostalgic associations of treasure maps with childhood adventures and imagination provide positive emotional connections that persist into adulthood. Playing with toy treasure maps, reading adventure stories, and watching pirate movies create memories that enhance the appeal of treasure hunting themes throughout life. The aspirational nature of treasure hunting appeals to people across economic levels, providing fantasies that scale appropriately to individual circumstances. Wealthy individuals can fund actual expeditions, while those with modest means can enjoy treasure hunting through books, games, and other forms of entertainment. The technological possibilities created by modern detection and communication equipment provide new ways to experience treasure hunting that previous generations could never have imagined. GPS navigation, metal detection, underwater exploration, and digital mapping have made certain aspects of treasure hunting more feasible while preserving the essential elements of mystery and discovery. As we conclude this exploration, it's worth asking what lessons we can draw from the remarkable persistence and influence of pirate treasure map mythology. Perhaps the most important lesson is that human beings have deep psychological needs for mystery, adventure, and transformation that cannot be satisfied by purely rational approaches to life. The treasure map serves these needs by providing a framework for imagining extraordinary possibilities within ordinary circumstances. It suggests that the world contains more adventure and opportunity than it usually reveals, and that these hidden possibilities are accessible to anyone brave enough to seek them. This message resonates across cultures and generations because it addresses fundamental aspects of human nature that transcend specific historical or social circumstances. The desire for adventure, the hope for transformation, and the belief in hidden opportunities are universal human characteristics that ensure the continued relevance of treasure hunting mythology. At the same time, our exploration has demonstrated the importance of distinguishing between myth and history, between the stories that satisfy our emotional needs and the facts that help us understand the past. The treasure map may be historically inaccurate, but it serves important psychological and cultural functions that deserve respect and understanding. The challenge for educators, historians, and communicators is finding ways to honor both the mythological and historical dimensions of topics like piracy. We can appreciate the appeal and cultural significance of treasure maps while also conveying accurate information about how real pirates actually lived and worked. Perhaps the most appropriate conclusion is to recognize that both myth and history have important roles to play in human culture. The treasure map may not be historically accurate, but it has inspired countless people to learn about maritime history, develop outdoor skills, and pursue adventures they might never have attempted otherwise. In this sense, the fictional treasure map has created real treasures, in the form of knowledge gained, skills developed, relationships formed, and experiences shared. These may not be the golden coins and precious gems of pirate legend, but they are valuable nonetheless. So the next time you encounter a treasure map, whether in a book, movie, game, or museum, you can appreciate it on multiple levels. You can enjoy its romantic appeal while understanding its fictional nature. You can admire its artistic craft while recognizing its historical inaccuracy. You can appreciate its cultural significance while maintaining awareness of its mythological status. And, perhaps most importantly, you can recognize that the real treasure isn't the gold and silver that the map pretends to reveal, but the human capacity for imagination, hope, and adventure that makes such maps meaningful in the first place. In a world that often seems to have few genuine mysteries left, the treasure map reminds us that the most important discoveries may be not what we find, but what we learn about ourselves in the process of looking. The X may not mark an actual spot where pirate treasure lies buried, but it does mark something equally valuable: the place where human imagination meets, the eternal hope that extraordinary possibilities await those bold enough to pursue them. And in that sense, every treasure map is real, because the dreams and aspirations it represents are genuine parts of human experience. Whether you choose to believe in treasure maps or view them as entertaining fiction, their enduring appeal reminds us that the human spirit requires more than just practical reality to thrive. We need mystery, adventure, and the promise of transformation to give life meaning and excitement. The pirate treasure map, historically false though it may be, serves these essential human needs and deserves recognition for the joy, inspiration, and sense of possibility it has provided to countless people across generations. In the end, perhaps that's treasure enough.